Our special live coverage of President Trump's first State of the Union address. I'm Judy Woodruff. Mr. Trump is said to want to strike some bipartisan notes before a Congress and a nation deeply divided. He will refer to building a safe, strong, and proud America, touting his economic record. The future of an immigration deal and the fate of so-called dreamers face a looming deadline. Some members of Congress have invited undocumented immigrants to be their guests for tonight's speech. Our Lisa Desjardins is there at the Capitol, and our Yamiche Alcindor is at the White House. And here with me in our studio at the table tonight, syndicated columnist Mark Shields and New York Times columnist David Brooks. The Cook Political Report's Amy Walter is here, along with the chair of the American Conservative Union, Matt Schlapp, and Karine Jean-Pierre. She's a senior advisor to MoveOn.org. Welcome to all of you as we keep one eye, or both eyes, I should say, on what's going on in the Capitol, in the House chamber, where the president is about to come in. Mark Shields, it's the president's first State of the Union. He's been in office for a year. What are we looking for tonight?
We're looking for the president to be presidential, which he said nobody could be presidential like he has. This is a ceremony of state. I mean, this is something that Donald Trump is totally unfamiliar with, never having been in the Congress or been a person in Washington. So it will be interesting to see how he fits into this, what Americans have come to expect about really this major ceremony in national life.
David, what are you looking for?
Well, it's been 1 year of Trump, which is 37 human years, converted into our lifestyle. And I'm looking, he does these reasonably well. He brings his uptown Trump when he does these things. The id gets put away. And I expect he'll be reasonably presidential. I guess I'm looking for actual policies. I mean, he does actually have a policy process in the White House, and we know he'll talk about immigration, but that's not going to fill a year. And so how's he going to fill the rest of the year? And so most of these addresses are famously laundry lists of policies. And it would be interesting, actually, if he could have a laundry list. I'd be curious to know what's on that beyond immigration and some vague jab at infrastructure.
Well, Amy, we don't know if it's uptown or downtown Donald Trump that we're going to see tonight. But from an American's perspective, and you've been looking at a lot of polls, thinking about what the voters are thinking right now, what do you think they're looking for tonight?
Well, the president can come in with a laundry list, as David said, of things that they've actually gotten done. He has a good economy behind him. A lot of the things he talked about in his first, it wasn't the State of the Union, but address to Congress, he's been able to accomplish, whether it's on immigration crossing the border, right? The lowest number of border crossing arrests that we've had in years, regulations being cut. And yet he also comes in as the most unpopular president at this point in a first term. And he making that connection between how he can be successful on the one hand and still be seen so negatively by majority of Americans, it's really all about him. It's the personality, it's not the policies that is driving perceptions of him, and it's likely to drive the 2018 election as well.
Matt Schlapp, does the president carry a special burden with him tonight, more than most presidents would?
I really don't think so. I think if the president was going to govern like most politicians, try to find a way to use language at these big events where they kind of soften their image, look for that soft, reassuring language. He just doesn't do that. I think David's right. I think he's going to sound presidential. It's going to be a presidential speech. But look, he is who he is. He's governing the way he's comfortable with governing. He believes at the end of the day, it's the results that will indicate whether or not he's a successful politician. Is the economy growing? Did we defeat ISIS? Do people feel greater security? That's kind of where he's putting his trust in the American people, that they'll like the results.
Karine Jean-Pierre, what about that? I mean, he very well probably is counting to a large degree on people looking at results.
Right, that's exactly right. Look, I have to tell you, I hate the word presidential now. I just can't stand it, because I think that it doesn't matter. This night actually, to me, doesn't matter at all, because he's going to probably stay on the teleprompter, but we know who Trump really is once he's off the teleprompter. It doesn't, maybe the presidential kind of sense of Trump will stay for more than an hour, maybe more than a day, but we know exactly who he is.
Here is the president. They are announcing him now. And this is the tradition, this is the ritual, Mark Shields, this is the way it's been done for president after president.
Since Harry Truman. 1947, when it went on television for the first time, and members realized that they could also appear next to the president in living rooms all over America.
And David, he makes his way down the aisle. Again, we've seen this scene so many times before. It's usually the members of the president's own party who get the closest. It's interesting to see if any Democrats are going to be reaching out to shake his hand.
If I were a good reporter, I would have been there at 5 p.m., which was when they used to start hoarding around the aisle seats to get into this shot. He's still a good bonus for a lot of people in a lot of seats, so they probably had a little of that, probably a little less than past presidents.
Amy, we're watching. Mark.
I just wanted to disagree with David early in the evening, and that is, it makes no difference what the president proposes. The only time it's made a difference what the president proposed was 1965, when Lyndon Johnson proposed Medicare, Medicaid, voting rights, and really changed America and federal aid to education. That he had 290 Democrats in the House and 68 in the Senate. Donald Trump doesn't have a governing legislative majority or coalition at this point. So he could propose joining the League of Nations, blowing up the League of
Mark is
Nations.
completely wrong about that.
Yeah, I'd like to tape that answer and keep playing it back when people say, why isn't he getting everything through the Senate? Because you're right.
Well, no, it matters tremendously to within the administration, because the State of the Union is the marching orders for people within the administration. It's a great organizing document.
Right.
It's a great document to get listed in.
And while we discuss what he is or isn't going to get done, the president is making his way down the center aisle in the House of Representatives. We are catching a glimpse now and then of the First Lady Melania Trump up in the balcony area with a number of guests who are the guests of the president and the First Lady tonight. We're going to be hearing about them in a minute, but right now the president is shaking hands. We see the House Majority Leader Kevin McCarthy, and now we're beginning to see the Pentagon, officials from the Pentagon, members of the president's cabinet. The president seems to be moving briskly at this point.
Yeah, he really does look like
To
he's
get-
moving
to
pretty
get to be
fast.
able to
get this
Yeah,
done
to get
and-
it done, make the speech, stay on teleprompter.
Amy, we just, here we go. Let's listen to this just a second.
Welcome.
Shaking hands with, of course, his own vice president and with House Speaker Paul Ryan, and he is getting right to it. I think it took him just a couple of minutes to get to the lectern, and he's about to speak. The President of the United States. This is where he gives each of them a copy of the speech.
Not everybody is standing.
No, and let it be known that Matt Schlapp was the one who said that. We always look to see whether members of the other party stand, applaud, and so forth. And right now, and we'll be talking about this later in the evening, different people tonight wearing different colors,
Yes.
symbolic of different issues and making different points.
And you have boycotts, too. Democrats who have boycotted.
That's right. I think there are 13 Democrats that we know of who have said they are not going tonight. I think 8 of them are members of the Congressional Black Caucus.
That's right.
But there are a handful of others as well. But right now, the applause sustains, and that is typical for most presidents. Most members of Congress, most states of State of the Union addresses accord the president the respect
Yes.
that the office deserves.
I mean, that's why
And they-
Joe Wilson was such an
Yeah,
aberration.
yeah,
when
you
he
lie, yeah.
Said you lied to the president. And the Sergeant at Arms has the authority to evict any member who's obstreperous or makes an outburst. So.
Members of Congress, I have the high privilege and the distinct honor of presenting to you the President of the United States.
And here comes another opportunity for members of Congress, especially those who are friendly to the president, to applaud.
The room is a lot smaller than it looks on TV, and so the atmosphere is a lot more intense.
Can I just point out how Melania's wearing white, and because a lot of the Me Too women are wearing black. So
They're
I thought
wearing black.
Yeah, and I don't know if there's any correlation, connection, but I thought it's really interesting that she's wearing white.
I'm actually noticing that the president and the speaker are wearing blue ties.
Yeah.
Mr. Speaker, Mr. Vice President, members of Congress, the First Lady of the United States, and my fellow Americans. Less than 1 year has passed since I first stood at this podium in this majestic chamber to speak on behalf of the American people and to address their concerns, their hopes, and their dreams. That night, our new administration had already taken very swift action. A new tide of optimism was already sweeping across our land. Each day since, we have gone forward with a clear vision and a righteous mission to make America great again for all Americans. Over the last year, we have made incredible progress and achieved extraordinary success. We have faced challenges we expected and others we could never have imagined. We have shared in the heights of victory and the pains of hardship. We have endured floods and fires and storms. But through it all, we have seen the beauty of America's soul and the steel in America's spine. Each test has forged new American heroes to remind us who we are and show us what we can be. We saw the volunteers of the Cajun Navy racing to the rescue with their fishing boats to save people in the aftermath of a totally devastating hurricane. We saw strangers shielding strangers from a hail of gunfire on the Las Vegas Strip. We heard tales of Americans like Coast Guard Petty Officer Ashley Leopard, who is here tonight in the gallery with Melania. Ashley was aboard one of the first helicopters on the scene in Houston during the Hurricane Harvey. Through 18 hours of wind and rain, Ashley braved live power lines and deep water to help save more than 40 lives. Ashley, we all thank you. Thank you very much. We heard about Americans like firefighter David Dahlberg. He's here with us also. David faced down walls of flame to rescue almost 60 children trapped at a California summer camp threatened by those devastating wildfires. To everyone still recovering in Texas, Florida, Louisiana, Puerto Rico, and the Virgin Islands, everywhere, we are with you. We love you, and we always will pull through together, always. Thank you to David and the brave people of California. Thank you very much, David. Great job. Some trials over the past year touched this chamber very personally. With us tonight is one of the toughest people ever to serve in this House. A guy who took a bullet, almost died, and was back to work 3.5 months later. The legend from Louisiana, Congressman Steve Scalise. I think they like you, Steve. We're incredibly grateful for the heroic efforts of the Capitol Police officers, the Alexandria Police, and the doctors, nurses, and paramedics who saved his life and the lives of many others, some in this room. In the aftermath, yes. In the aftermath of that terrible shooting, we came together, not as Republicans or Democrats, but as representatives of the people. But it is not enough to come together only in times of tragedy. Tonight, I call upon all of us to set aside our differences, to seek out common ground, and to summon the unity we need to deliver for the people. This is really the key. These are the people we were elected to serve. Thank you. Over the last year, the world has seen what we always knew, that no people on earth are so fearless or daring or determined as Americans. If there is a mountain, we climb it. If there's a frontier, we cross it. If there's a challenge, we tame it. If there's an opportunity, we seize it. So let's begin tonight by recognizing that the state of our union is strong because our people are strong. And together we are building a safe, strong, and proud America. Since the election, we have created 2.4 million new jobs, including including 200,000 new jobs in manufacturing alone. Tremendous numbers. After years and years of wage stagnation, we are finally seeing rising wages. Unemployment claims have hit a 45-year low. And something I'm very proud of, African American unemployment stands at the lowest rate ever recorded. And Hispanic American unemployment has also reached the lowest levels in history. Small business confidence is at an all-time high. The stock market has smashed one record after another, gaining $8 trillion and more in value in just this short period of time. The great news for Americans, 401k, retirement pension, and college savings accounts have gone through the roof. And just as I promised the American people from this podium 11 months ago, we enacted the biggest tax cuts and reforms in American history. Our massive tax cuts provide tremendous relief for the middle class and small business. To lower tax rates for hardworking Americans, we nearly doubled the standard deduction for everyone. Now, the first $24,000 earned by a married couple is completely tax-free. We also doubled the child tax credit. A typical family of four making $75,000 will see their tax bill reduced by $2,000, slashing their tax bill in half. In April, this will be the last time you will ever file under the old and very broken system, and millions of Americans will have more take-home pay starting next month, a lot more. We eliminated an especially cruel tax that fell mostly on Americans making less than $50,000 a year, forcing them to pay tremendous penalties simply because they couldn't afford government-ordered health plans. We repealed the core of the disastrous Obamacare. The individual mandate is now gone. Thank heaven. We slashed the business tax rate from 35% all the way down to 21%, so American companies can compete and win against anyone else anywhere in the world. These changes alone are estimated to increase average family income by more than $4,000. A lot of money. Small businesses have also received a massive tax cut and can now deduct 20% of their business income. Here tonight are Steve Staub and Sandy Keplinger of Staub Manufacturing, a small, beautiful business in Ohio. They've just finished the best year in their 20-year history. Because of tax reform, they are handing out raises, hiring an additional 14 people, and expanding into the building next door. Good feeling. One of Staub's employees, Corey Adams, is also with us tonight. Corey is an all-American worker. He supported himself through high school, lost his job during the 2008 recession, and was later hired by Staub, where he trained to become a welder. Like many hardworking Americans, Corey plans to invest his tax cut raise into his new home and his two daughters' education. Corey, please stand. and he's a great welder. I was told that by the man that owns that company that's doing so well. So congratulations, Corey. Since we passed tax cuts, roughly 3 million workers have already gotten tax cut bonuses, many of them thousands and thousands of dollars per worker, and it's getting more every month, every week. Apple has just announced it plans to invest a total of $350 billion in America and hire another 20,000 workers. And just a little while ago, ExxonMobil announced a $50 billion investment in the United States. Just a little while ago. This, in fact, is our new American moment. There has never been a better time to start living the American dream. So to every citizen watching at home tonight, no matter where you've been or where you've come from, this is your time. If you work hard, if you believe in yourself, if you believe in America, then you can dream anything. You can be anything. And together, we can achieve absolutely anything. Tonight, I want to talk about what kind of future we're going to have and what kind of a nation we're going to be. All of us together as one team, one people, and one American family can do anything. We all share the same home, the same heart, the same destiny, and the same great American flag. Together, we are rediscovering the American way. In America, we know that faith and family, not government and bureaucracy, are the center of American life. The motto is, "In God we trust." And we celebrate our police, our military, and our amazing veterans as heroes who deserve our total and unwavering support. Here tonight is Preston Sharp, a 12-year-old boy from Redding, California, who noticed that veterans' graves were not marked with flags on Veterans Day. He decided all by himself to change that and started a movement that has now placed 40,000 flags at the graves of our great heroes. Preston, a job well done. Young patriots like Preston teach all of us about our civic duty, as Americans. And I met Preston a little while ago, and he is something very special that I can tell you. Great future. Thank you very much for all you've done, Preston. Thank you very much. Preston's reverence for those who have served our nation reminds us of why we salute our flag, why we put our hands on our hearts for the Pledge of Allegiance, and why we proudly stand for the national anthem. Americans love their country, and they deserve a government that shows them the same love and loyalty in return. For the last year, we have sought to restore the bonds of trust between our citizens and their government. Working with the Senate, we are appointing judges who will interpret the Constitution as written, including a great new Supreme Court justice and more circuit court judges than any new administration in the history of our country. We are totally defending our Second Amendment and have taken historic actions to protect religious liberty. And we are serving our brave veterans, including giving our veterans choice in their health care decisions. Last year, Congress also passed, and I signed, the landmark VA Accountability Act. Since its passage, my administration has already removed more than 1,500 VA employees who failed to give our veterans the care they deserve. And we are hiring talented people who love our vets as much as we do. And I will not stop until our veterans are properly taken care of, which has been my promise to them from the very beginning of this great journey. All Americans deserve accountability and respect, and that's what we are giving to our wonderful heroes, our veterans. Thank you. So tonight I call on Congress to empower every cabinet secretary with the authority to reward good workers and to remove federal employees who undermine the public trust or fail the American people. In our drive to make Washington accountable, we have eliminated more regulations in our first year than any administration in the history of our country. We have ended the war on American energy, and we have ended the war on beautiful, clean coal. We are now very proudly an exporter of energy to the world. In Detroit, I halted government mandates that crippled America's great, beautiful auto workers so that we can get Motor City revving its engines again, and that's what's happening. Many car companies are now building and expanding plants in the United States, something we haven't seen for decades. Chrysler is moving a major plant from Mexico to Michigan. Toyota and Mazda are opening up a plant in Alabama, a big one, and we haven't seen this in a long time. It's all coming back. Very soon, auto plants and other plants will be opening up all over our country. This is all news Americans are totally unaccustomed to hearing. For many years, companies and jobs were only leaving us. But now, they are roaring back, they're coming back. They want to be where the action is. They want to be in the United States of America. That's where they want to be. Exciting progress is happening every single day. To speed access to breakthrough cures and affordable generic drugs, last year, the FDA approved more new and generic drugs and medical devices than ever before in our country's history. We also believe that patients with terminal conditions, terminal illness, should have access to experimental treatment immediately that could potentially save their lives. People who are terminally ill should not have to go from country to seek a cure. I want to give them a chance right here at home. It's time for Congress to give these wonderful, incredible Americans the right to try. One of my greatest priorities is to reduce the price of prescription drugs. In many other countries, these drugs cost far less than what we pay in the United States, and it's very, very unfair. That is why I've directed my administration to make fixing the injustice of high drug prices one of my top priorities for the year. and prices will come down substantially. Watch. America has also finally turned the page on decades of unfair trade deals that sacrificed our prosperity and shipped away our companies, our jobs, and our wealth. Our nation has lost its wealth, but we're getting it back so fast. The era of economic surrender is totally over. From now on, we expect trading relationships to be fair and, very importantly, reciprocal. We will work to fix bad trade deals and negotiate new ones, and they'll be good ones, but they'll be fair. And we will protect American workers and American intellectual property through strong enforcement of our trade rules. As we rebuild our industries, it is also time to rebuild our crumbling infrastructure. America is a nation of builders. We built the Empire State Building in just 1 year. Isn't it a disgrace that it can now take 10 years just to get a minor permit approved for the building of a simple road? I am asking both parties to come together to give us safe, fast, reliable, and modern infrastructure that our economy needs and our people deserve. Tonight, I'm calling on Congress to produce a bill that generates at least $1.5 trillion for the new infrastructure investment that our country so desperately needs. Every federal dollar should be leveraged by partnering with state and local governments and, where appropriate, tapping into private sector investment to permanently fix the infrastructure deficit, and we can do it. Any bill must also streamline the permitting and approval process, getting it down to no more than 2 years and perhaps even 1. Together, we can reclaim our great building heritage. We will build gleaming new roads, bridges, highways, railways, and waterways all across our land. And we will do it with American heart, American hands, and American grit. We want every American to know the dignity of a hard day's work. We want every child to be safe in their home at night. And we want every citizen to be proud of this land that we all love so much. We can lift our citizens from welfare to work, from dependence to independence, and from poverty to prosperity. As tax cuts create new jobs. Let's invest in workforce development, and let's invest in job training, which we need so badly. Let's open great vocational schools so our future workers can learn a craft and realize their full potential. And let's support working families by supporting paid family leave. As America regains its strength, opportunity must be extended to all citizens. That is why this year we will embark on reforming our prisons to help former inmates who have served their time get a second chance at life. Struggling communities, especially immigrant communities, will also be helped by immigration policies that focus on the best interests of American workers and American families. For decades, open borders have allowed drugs and gangs to pour into our most vulnerable communities. They've allowed millions of low-wage workers to compete for jobs and wages against the poorest Americans. Most tragically, they have caused the loss of many innocent lives. Here tonight are two fathers and two mothers, Evelyn Rodriguez, Freddie Cuevas, Elizabeth Alvarado, and Robert Mickens. Their two teenage daughters, Kayla Cuevas and Nisa Mickens, were close friends on Long Island. But in September 2016, on the eve of Nisa's 16th birthday, such a happy time it should have been, neither of them came home. These two precious girls were brutally murdered while walking together in their hometown. 6 members of the savage MS-13 gang have been charged with Kayla and Nisa's murders. Many of these gang members took advantage of glaring loopholes in our laws to enter the country as illegal, unaccompanied, alien minors and wound up in Kayla and Nisa's high school. Evelyn, Elizabeth, Freddie, and Robert, tonight everyone in this chamber is praying for you. Everyone in America is grieving for you. Please stand. Thank you very much. I want you to know that 320 million hearts are right now breaking for you. We love you. Thank you. While we cannot imagine the depths of that kind of sorrow, we can make sure that other families never have to endure this kind of pain. Tonight, I am calling on Congress to finally close the deadly loopholes that have allowed MS-13 and other criminal gangs to break into our country. We have proposed new legislation that will fix our immigration laws and support our ICE and Border Patrol agents. These are great people. These are great, great people that work so hard in the midst of such danger so that this can never happen again. The United States is a compassionate nation. We are proud that we do more than any other country anywhere in the world to help the needy, the struggling, and the underprivileged all over the world. But as President of the United States, my highest loyalty, my greatest compassion, my constant concern is for America's children, America's struggling workers, and America's forgotten communities. I want our youth to grow up, to achieve great things. I want our poor to have their chance to rise. So tonight, I am extending an open hand to work with members of both parties, Democrats and Republicans, to protect our citizens of every background, color, religion, and creed. My duty, and the sacred duty of every elected official in this chamber, is to defend Americans, to protect their safety, their families, their communities, and their right to the American dream. Because Americans are dreamers too. Here tonight is one leader in the effort to defend our country, Homeland Security Investigation Special Agent Celestino Martinez. He goes by DJ and CJ. He said, call me either one. So we'll call you CJ. Served 15 years in the Air Force before becoming an ICE agent and spending the last 15 years fighting gang violence and getting dangerous criminals off of our streets. Tough job. At one point, MS-13 leaders ordered CJ's murder, and they wanted it to happen quickly. But he did not cave to threats or to fear. Last May, he commanded an operation to track down gang members on Long Island. His team has arrested nearly 400, including more than 220 MS-13 gang members. And I have to tell you, what the Border Patrol and ICE have done, we have sent thousands and thousands and thousands of MS-13 horrible people out of this country or into our prisons. So I just want to congratulate you, CJ. You're a brave guy. Thank you very much. And I asked CJ, what's the secret? He said, we're just tougher than they are. And I like that answer. Now let's get Congress to send you, and all of the people in this great chamber have to do it. We have no choice. CJ, we're going to send you reinforcements, and we're going to send them to you quickly. It's what you need. Over the next few weeks, the House and Senate will be voting on an immigration reform package. In recent months, my administration has met extensively with both Democrats and Republicans to craft a bipartisan approach to immigration reform. Based on these discussions, we presented Congress with a detailed proposal that should be supported by both parties as a fair compromise, one where nobody gets everything they want, but where our country gets the critical reforms it needs and must have. Here are the 4 pillars of our plan. The first pillar of our framework generously offers a path to citizenship for 1.8 million illegal immigrants who were brought here by their parents at a young age. That covers almost 3 times more people than the previous administration covered. Under our plan, those who meet education and work requirements and show good moral character will be able to become full citizens of the United States over a 12-year period. The second pillar fully secures the border. That means building a great wall on the southern border, and it means hiring more heroes like CJ to keep our communities safe. Crucially, our plan closes the terrible loopholes exploited by criminals and terrorists to enter our country, and it finally ends the horrible and dangerous practice of catch and release. The third pillar ends the visa lottery, a program that randomly hands out green cards without any regard for skill, merit, or the safety of American people. It's time to begin moving toward a merit-based immigration system, one that admits people who are skilled, who want to work, who will contribute to our society, and who will love and respect our country. The fourth and final pillar protects the nuclear family by ending chain migration. Under the current broken system, a single immigrant can bring in virtually unlimited numbers of distant relatives. Under our plan, we focus on the immediate family by limiting sponsorships to spouses and minor children. This vital reform is necessary not just for our economy, but for our security and for the future of America. In recent weeks, 2 terrorist attacks in New York were made possible by the visa lottery and chain migration. In the age of terrorism, these programs present risks we can just no longer afford. It's time to reform. These outdated immigration rules and finally bring our immigration system into the 21st century. These four pillars represent a down-the-middle compromise and one that will create a safe, modern, and lawful immigration system. For over 30 years, Washington has tried and failed to solve this problem. This Congress can be the one that finally makes it happen. Most importantly, these four pillars will produce legislation that fulfills my ironclad pledge to sign a bill that puts America first. So let's come together, set politics aside, and finally get the job done. These reforms will also support our response to the terrible crisis of opioid and drug addiction. Never before has it been like it is now. It is terrible. We have to do something about it. In 2016, we lost 64,000 Americans to drug overdoses, 174 deaths per day, 7 per hour. We must get much tougher on drug dealers and pushers if we are going to succeed in stopping this scourge. My administration is committed to fighting the drug epidemic and helping get treatment for those in need, for those who have been so terribly hurt. The struggle will be long and it will be difficult, but as Americans always do, in the end, we will succeed, we will prevail. As we have seen tonight, the most difficult challenges bring out the best in America. We see a vivid expression of this truth in the story of the Holetz family of New Mexico. Ryan Holetz is 27 years old, an officer with the Albuquerque Police Department. He's here tonight with his wife, Rebecca. Thank you, Ryan. Last year, Ryan was on duty when he saw a pregnant, homeless woman preparing to inject heroin. When Ryan told her she was going to harm her unborn child, she began to weep. She told him she didn't know where to turn, but badly wanted a safe home for her baby. In that moment, Ryan said he felt God speak to him. You will do it because you can. He heard those words. He took out a picture of his wife and their 4 kids. Then he went home to tell his wife, Rebecca. In an instant, she agreed to adopt. The Holetz named their new daughter Hope. Ryan and Rebecca, you embody the goodness of our nation. Thank you. Thank you, Ryan and Rebecca. As we rebuild America's strength and confidence at home, we are also restoring our strength and standing abroad. Around the world, we face rogue regimes, terrorist groups, and rivals like China and Russia that challenge our interests, our economy, and our values. In confronting these horrible dangers, we know that weakness is the surest path to conflict, and unmatched power is the surest means to our true and great defense. For this reason, I am asking Congress to end the dangerous defense sequester and fully fund our great military. As part of our defense, we must modernize and rebuild our nuclear arsenal, hopefully never having to use it, but making it so strong and so powerful that it will deter any acts of aggression by any other nation or anyone else. Perhaps someday in the future, there will be a magical moment when the countries of the world will get together to eliminate their nuclear weapons. Unfortunately, we are not there yet, sadly. Last year, I also pledged that we would work with our allies to extinguish ISIS from the face of the earth. 1 year later, I am proud to report that the coalition to defeat ISIS has liberated very close to 100% of the territory just recently held by these killers in Iraq and in Syria and in other locations as well. But there is much more work to be done. We will continue our fight until ISIS is defeated. Army Staff Sergeant Justin Peck is here tonight. Near Raqqa last November, Justin and his comrade, Chief Petty Officer Kenton Stacy, were on a mission to clear buildings that ISIS had rigged with explosive, so that civilians could return to that city, hopefully soon and hopefully safely. Clearing the second floor of a vital hospital, Kenton Stacy was severely wounded by an explosion. Immediately, Justin bounded into the booby-trapped and unbelievably dangerous and unsafe building and found Kenton, but in very, very bad shape. He applied pressure to the wound and inserted a tube to reopen an airway. He then performed CPR for 20 straight minutes during the ground transport and maintained artificial respiration through 2.5 hours and through emergency surgery. Kenton Stacy would have died if it were not for Justin's selfless love for his fellow warrior. Tonight, Kenton is recovering in Texas. Raqqa is liberated, and Justin is wearing his new Bronze Star with a V for valor. Staff Sergeant Peck, all of America salutes you. Terrorists who do things like place bombs in civilian hospitals are evil. When possible, we have no choice but to annihilate them. When necessary, we must be able to detain and question them. But we must be clear, terrorists are not merely criminals. They are unlawful enemy combatants. And when captured overseas, they should be treated like the terrorists they are. In the past, we have foolishly released hundreds and hundreds of dangerous terrorists, only to meet them again on the battlefield, including the ISIS leader, al-Baghdadi, who we captured, who we had, who we released. So today, I'm keeping another promise. I just signed, prior to walking in, an order directing Secretary Mattis, who is doing a great job. Thank you. To re-examine our military detention policy and to keep open the detention facilities in Guantanamo Bay. I am asking Congress to ensure that in the fight against ISIS and al-Qaeda, we continue to have all necessary power to detain terrorists wherever we chase them down, wherever we find them. And in many cases, for them, it will now be Guantanamo Bay. At the same time, as of a few months ago, our warriors in Afghanistan have new rules of engagement. Along with their heroic Afghan partners, our military is no longer undermined by artificial timelines, and we no longer tell our enemies our plans. Last month, I also took an action endorsed unanimously by the U.S. Senate just months before. I recognized Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. Shortly afterwards, dozens of countries voted in the United Nations General Assembly against America's sovereign right to make this decision. In 2016, American taxpayers generously sent those same countries more than $20 billion in aid. That is why tonight I am asking Congress to pass legislation to help ensure American foreign assistance dollars always serve American interests and only go to friends of America, not enemies of America. As we strengthen friendships all around the world, we are also restoring clarity about our adversaries. When the people of Iran rose up against the crimes of their corrupt dictatorship, I did not stay silent. America stands with the people of Iran in their courageous struggle for freedom. I am asking Congress to address the fundamental flaws in the terrible Iran nuclear deal. My administration has also imposed tough sanctions on the communist and socialist dictatorships in Cuba and Venezuela. But no regime has oppressed its own citizens more totally or brutally than the cruel dictatorship in North Korea. North Korea's reckless pursuit of nuclear missiles could very soon threaten our homeland. We are waging a campaign of maximum pressure to prevent that from ever happening. Past experience has taught us that complacency and concessions only invite aggression and provocation. I will not repeat the mistakes of past administrations that got us into this very dangerous position. We need only look at the depraved character of the North Korean regime to understand the nature of the nuclear threat it could pose to America and to our allies. Otto Warmbier was a hard-working student at the University of Virginia, and a great student he was. On his way to study abroad in Asia, Otto joined a tour to North Korea. At its conclusion, this wonderful young man was arrested and charged with crimes against the state. After a shameful trial, the dictatorship sentenced Otto to 15 years of hard labor before returning him to America last June, horribly injured and on the verge of death. He passed away just days after his return. Otto's wonderful parents, Fred and Cindy Warmbier, are here with us tonight, along with Otto's brother and sister, Austin and Greta. Please. Incredible people. You are powerful witnesses to a menace that threatens our world, and your strength truly inspires us all. Thank you very much. Thank you. Tonight, we pledge to honor Otto's memory with total American resolve. Thank you. Finally, we are joined by one more witness to the ominous nature of this regime. His name is Mr. Ji Sung Ho. In 1996, Sung Ho was a starving boy in North Korea. One day he tried to steal coal from a railroad car to barter for a few scraps of food, which were very hard to get. In the process, he passed out on the train tracks, exhausted from hunger. He woke up as a train ran over his limbs. He then endured multiple amputations without anything to dull the pain or the hurt. His brother and sister gave what little food they had to help him recover and ate dirt themselves, permanently stunting their own growth. Later, he was tortured by North Korean authorities after returning from a brief visit to China. His tormentors wanted to know if he'd met any Christians. He had, and he resolved after that to be free. Sung Ho traveled thousands of miles on crutches all across China and Southeast Asia to freedom. Most of his family followed. His father was caught trying to escape and was tortured to death. Today, he lives in Seoul, where he rescues other defectors and broadcasts into North Korea what the regime fears most, the truth. Today, he has a new leg, but Sung Ho, I understand you still keep those old crutches as a reminder of how far you've come. Your great sacrifice is an inspiration to us all. Please, thank you. Sung Ho's story is a testament to the yearning of every human soul to live in freedom. It was that same yearning for freedom that nearly 250 years ago gave birth to a special place called America. It was a small cluster of colonies caught between a great ocean and a vast wilderness. It was home to an incredible people with a revolutionary idea that they could rule themselves, that they could chart their own destiny, and that together they could light up the entire world. That is what our country has always been about. That is what Americans have always stood for, always strived for, and always done. Atop the dome of this Capitol stands the Statue of Freedom. She stands tall and dignified among the monuments to our ancestors who fought and lived and died to protect her. Monuments to Washington and Jefferson and Lincoln and King. Memorials to the heroes of Yorktown and Saratoga, to young Americans who shed their blood on the shores of Normandy and the fields beyond, and others who went down in the waters of the Pacific and the skies all over Asia. And freedom stands tall over one more monument, this one. This Capitol, this living monument, this is the monument to the American people. We're a people whose heroes live not only in the past, but all around us, defending hope, pride, and defending the American way. They work in every trade. They sacrifice to raise a family. They care for our children at home. They defend our flag abroad. And they are strong moms and brave kids. They are firefighters and police officers and border agents, medics and Marines. But above all else, they are Americans. And this capital, this city, this nation belongs entirely to them. Our task is to respect them, to listen to them, to serve them, to protect them, and to always be worthy of them. Americans fill the world with art and music. They push the bounds of science and discovery, and they forever remind us of what we should never, ever forget. The people dreamed this country. The people built this country. And it's the people who are making America great again. As long as we are proud of who we are and what we are fighting for, there is nothing we cannot achieve. As long as we have confidence in our values, faith in our citizens, and trust in our God, we will never fail. Our families will thrive. Our people will prosper. And our nation will forever be safe and strong and proud and mighty and free. Thank you, and God bless America. Good night.
President Trump concludes his State of the Union address. He went an hour and 20 minutes. If State of the Union addresses normally are a laundry list of policy proposals, this one certainly outlined what the president sees as his economic successes in his 1 year in office, and it was a call to reach across the aisle seeking Democratic support for his immigration proposal, to come up with an infrastructure relief plan. But as much as anything, Mark Shields, I think in the last half hour, a celebration of American survival and courage, with I think one guest after another in the audience, a North Korean defector, the police officer who adopted the baby of a couple addicted of heroin, the parents of 2 teenage girls who were murdered by gang members. There were some emotional moments during this hour and 20 minutes.
Very emotional moments, and several of them were really quite special, especially the police officer and his wife with 4 children who adopted the unborn child of a heroin addict, which is really rather remarkable. But it was a different Donald Trump, certainly from the inaugural. It was no carnage. There was no dark and bleak. It was quite upbeat. What struck me is the willingness to applaud. I noticed that Speaker Ryan did not stand up and applaud when the president endorsed family leave, paid family leave, and that was the one exception. But I mean, the infrastructure; those were big items, and the call for unity, Judy, while appealing, we'll see how long-lasting it is. It has rather limited shelf life when the president calls people on the other side. At last count, he personally insulted 83 Democratic elected members by name in his tweets, and we'll see if that does. But tonight it was a bigger Donald Trump and sort of a reaching across the aisle. You're right,
But David, I was just going to say, David, there were many Democrats who were not standing when the president was speaking.
No, it's weird. Now you seem to write speeches designed to get the people, the opposition, to not stand, and you hope they look bad. That's one of the designs of these speeches. I actually disagree with Mark on the tone of the speech. I was struck first by the amazing number of people that he cited in the balcony. Lenny Skutnik was the first one in 1982. The Ronald Reagan cited. I've never seen so many cited.
No.
But when you put the tapestry of stories together, you get a pretty grim view.
Yeah.
He starts with some uplift about the economic numbers, but most of the stories about people getting killed. It's about death in North Korea, near death in Iraq, death from MS-13, and so you evoke an emotional atmosphere of survivorship against hardship and against malevolence and against threat. And that's an emotional atmosphere designed to minimize compassion, to minimize hope, and to shrink certain emotions and grow certain tough-minded ones.
The president making his way out of the chamber, greeting members of Congress. Amy, I wrote down the word survival there toward the end.
I wrote down safety and security. I'm with David.
Yeah.
I mean, I think if we go through this speech and look at the amount of time the president spent on the economy and jobs, the issues that he talked about, obviously a lot on the campaign, but that Americans are saying they feel the best about, compared to the amount of time he spent on MS-13, ICE, Border Patrol, drug pushers and dealers, terrorists, Guantanamo Bay, rebuilding our nuclear arsenal, North Korea. I think that would outweigh the talk about jobs and the economy. And there was very little. There's a lot of laundry list. There always is in these things. Very, very little specifics, if any, on infrastructure, lowering prescription drug costs, reforming prisons, even on trade. We're in the middle of negotiating, the U.S. is in the middle of negotiating NAFTA. No hints there about where we're going to go with a very, very big trade deal.
Matt Schlapp, what about the tone? What about what Amy said about the tone of this speech not being
Well, Amy wanted a
uplifting?
longer speech because she wanted more details. I think it was a plenty long speech, and I think the policy cupboard is bare. We kind of touched everything. And the tone, I completely disagree respectfully with David. I actually think these are American stories. These are stories that need to be told. You know, like Donald Trump or don't like Donald Trump, his election surprised a lot of people because he was talking to and connecting to people who aren't always listened to. And the stories of the people today were stories that we haven't all heard. Some of them really are uplifting stories, the stories of bravery, stories of cops, stories of soldiers, stories of people being decent, yes, and people having to, experience death because of maybe bad policies. And I actually think weaving it together, Donald Trump built this speech on the plain stories of American people.
Karine Jean-Pierre.
Yeah. So I agree with Amy and David on this one. I think there was, to me, a lot of dog whistle with this like carnage that was twisted in this positive way. And I think he was definitely talking to his base, and it didn't seem partisan to me at all. And then
Did or didn't?
Did not. And I think there was this other part of it too that where there were just a lot of untruths, right? And when I talk about the dog whistle, he talks about, when he talks about immigrants, he talks about terrorism, and that's why we need to have this immigrant policy by using terrorism, MS-13, like Amy was saying, ICE and Border Patrol. So there was a lot of this kind of red meat that I think he was very much throwing to his base. And then there were this fact checking that you needed to do about coal, about African American unemployment, which he should not get credit for. The hurricane, FEMA announced today that it was cutting food and services to Puerto Rico. So there was a lot of that as well.
And you're right. I mean, there was a listing, and all night we're seeing tweets of factual corrections. The president is leaving leaving the House chamber. It looks to me like it's cleared out surprisingly quickly.
Oh, wow.
We're used to seeing people
is that the
stick around
Democrats?
for a little bit longer.
Can I defend
I just want to
myself?
say we are going to be hearing, I
Okay.
think in about 5 or 10 minutes now, from Congressman Joe Kennedy, who will give the Democratic response. There's a countdown from the time the president walks out that door until we hear from Congressman Kennedy. But Mark, I
Yes,
don't
all
want to
right,
stand in your
okay.
way.
Let me associate myself with Matt, which I have never said before, and disassociate myself from David and Amy.
Soon they forget.
Yeah, right. Let me just say.
The hour must be late.
No, let me just say. I mean, were the facts wrong? Sure. I mean, it was the slowest job growth in the last 6 years. 2017 was. I mean, yes, but I do think the bar is low. But Donald Trump showed a side of himself this evening, which he hasn't shown. I mean, he's been a divisive, personalizing president, criticizing, not establishing relations with people on the other side, many on his own side. He's driven 2 senators of his own party to retirement who disagree with him, Bob Corker and Jeff Flake. But I mean, at the same time, he did tonight show a side that was more civil.
Yes, and I will say this: he spent less time talking about himself and allowing
that was the
other
point
people
I was going to make
speak
about
for
the
him.
anecdotes.
I agree.
He was not talking about Donald Trump all the time.
Before you go any further, I want to go to our White House correspondent, Yamiche Alcindor. She's there at the big White House. Yamiche, you were listening to this. You had gotten a sense earlier today what the president wanted to say. Did that come across?
I think it very much came across. The president essentially had a laundry list of ideas and goals that he wanted to communicate to the American people, chief among them immigration. That the line that sticks out to me is that Americans are dreamers too. For the base, that really I think is going to make them very happy. But for the people that are still struggling with immigration, it shows that he might be pitting Americans against immigrants. The other thing I thought about was the idea that he was bringing into the chamber people who were affected by crime that was committed by immigrants. There's this idea that this administration is being accused of using stereotypes, mainly that immigrants are both a drag on the social safety net, but also criminality, that they could be criminals, that's something that people could take away from this speech. He did, however, hit on topics that could be bipartisan. He talked about the opioid crisis. He talked about infrastructure. But this was a speech that was written by so many different people, with H.R. McMaster and Stephen Miller and Gary Cohen weighing in, that the president really just had to deliver what was in the teleprompter. He did not go off speech. I was following along with the speech most of the time, and he did very little ad-libbing. So that's something that the president was able to at least keep that in line. But he did clap for himself a lot, so you could tell that he was up there having a good time.
We were noticing that. Yamiche, we're only about a minute or so away from the Democratic response, but just very quickly, the president made several calls to Democrats to reach across the aisle. Is the White House serious about that?
The White House says that they are very serious about reaching across the aisle, but they also have very clear lines. They said the word chain migration again today. He said the word chain migration. That's something that's that makes Democrats very, very angry. They think that families should have the right to be united, but he cast it as protecting nuclear families by ending families coming together from immigration. There's this idea that he wants to work with the Democrats, but he wants to work on his terms. Of course, the Republicans control all the seats of government. They have the House, the Senate, and the White House. So working with the Democrats might turn into, you need to sign on and agree with what we have because we're the ones with the power. He's hinted that that Mitch McConnell should change the rules of the Senate to make it easier for Republicans to pass legislation only for Republicans, only supported by Republicans. So that tells me that even though the president wants to work with Democrats, they also are ready to use a backup plan which would completely circumvent Democrats.
A so-called filibuster rule. Yamiche, we're going to come back to you later. We are just a few seconds away, I think, from hearing the Democratic response. It's going to come from the third-term congressman from the state of Massachusetts. He is Joseph Kennedy, 37 years old. He's the son of a former Congressman, Joe Kennedy, the grandson of an attorney general, the late Robert F. Kennedy, and of course, great nephew of President John F. Kennedy. There was a lot of conversation about who the Democrats should have chosen. We're going to get a chance to hear him right now. Congressman Joe Kennedy.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is an absolute privilege to join you all tonight. We are here in Fall River, Massachusetts, a proud American city. An American city built by immigrants. From textiles to robots, this is a place that knows how to make great things. The students who are with us here this evening in the Auto Tech program at Diamond Regional Technical School carry on that rich legacy. Like many American hometowns, Fall River has faced its share of storms. But the people here are tough. They fight for each other. They pull for their city. It is a fitting place to gather as our nation reflects on the state of our union. This is a difficult task. Many have spent the last year anxious, angry, afraid. We all feel the fractured fault lines across our country. We hear the voices of Americans who are forgotten and feel forsaken. We see an economy that makes stocks soar, investor portfolios bulge, and corporate profits climb, but fails to give workers their fair share of the reward. A government that struggles to keep itself open. Russia, knee-deep in our democracy. An all-out war on environmental protection. A Justice Department rolling back civil rights by the day. Hatred and supremacy proudly marching in our streets. Bullets tearing through our classrooms, concerts, and congregations, targeting our safest, sacred places. And this nagging, sinking feeling, no matter your political beliefs, that this is not right. This is not who we are. Folks, it would be easy to dismiss this past year as chaos, partisanship as politics. But it's far, far bigger than that. This administration isn't just targeting the laws that protect us. They're targeting the very idea that we are all worthy of protection. For them, dignity isn't something you're born with, but something you measure by your net worth, your celebrity, your headlines, your crowd size. Not to mention the gender of your spouse, the country of your birth, the color of your skin, the God of your prayers. Their record is a rebuke to our highest American ideal, the belief that we are all worthy, that we are all equal, that we all count in the eyes of our law and our leaders, our God and our government. That is the American promise. today, ladies and gentlemen, today, that promise is being broken by an administration that callously appraises our worthiness and decides who makes the cut and who can be bargained away. They're turning American life into a zero-sum game where for one to win, another must lose, where we can guarantee America's safety if we slash our safety net, where we can extend healthcare in Mississippi if we gut it in Massachusetts. We can cut taxes for corporations today if we raise them on families tomorrow, where we can take care of sick kids if we sacrifice dreamers. We are bombarded with one false choice after another: coal miners or single moms, rural communities or inner cities, the coast or the heartland. As if the mechanic in Pittsburgh, a teacher in Tulsa, and a daycare worker in Birmingham are bitter rivals, rather than mutual casualties of a system forcefully rigged towards those at the top. As if the parent who lies awake, terrified that their transgender son or daughter will be beaten and bullied at school, is any more or less legitimate than a parent whose heart is shattered by a daughter in the grips of an opioid addiction. So here is the answer that Democrats offer tonight. We choose both. We fight for both, because the greatest, strongest, richest nation in the world should not have to leave anyone behind. We choose a better deal for all who call our country home. We choose a living wage and the paid leave and affordable childcare your family needs to survive. We choose pensions that are solvent, trade pacts that are fair, roads and bridges that won't rust away, a good education that you can afford. We choose a healthcare system that offers you mercy, whether you suffer from cancer or depression or addiction. We choose an economy strong enough to boast record stock prices and brave enough to admit that top CEOs making 300 times their average worker is not right. We choose Fall River. We choose the thousands of American communities whose roads aren't paved with power or privilege, but with an honest effort, with good faith, and the resolve to build something better for your kids. That is our story. It began the day our founding fathers and mothers set sail for a new world, fleeing oppression and intolerance. It continued with every word of our independence, the audacity to declare that all men are created equal, an imperfect promise for a nation struggling to become a more perfect union. It grew with every suffragette step, every freedom rider's voice, and with every weary soul we welcome to our shores. And to all the dreamers out there watching tonight, let me be absolutely clear. Ustedes son parte de nuestra historia. Vamos a luchar por ustedes y no nos vamos a alejar. You are part of our story. We will fight for you, and we will not walk away. we carry that story on our shoulders. You swarmed Washington last year to ensure that no parent has to worry if they can afford to save their child's life. You proudly marched together last weekend, thousands deep, on the streets of Las Vegas and Philadelphia and Nashville. You sat high atop your mom's shoulders and held a sign that read, "Build a wall, and my generation will tear it down." You bravely say, "Me too." You steadfastly say, "Black Lives Matter." You wade through floodwaters, battle hurricanes, brave wildfires and mudslides to save a stranger. You battle your own quiet battles every single day. You drag your weary bodies to that extra shift so that your families won't feel the sting of scarcity. You leave loved ones at home to defend our country overseas or patrol our neighborhoods at night. You serve, you rescue, you help, you heal. That, more than any law or leader, debate or disagreement, that is what drives us towards progress. Bullies may land a punch, they may leave a mark, but they have never, not once in the history of our United States, managed to match the strength and spirit of a people united in defense of their future. Politicians can be cheered for the promises they make. Our country will be judged by the promises we keep. That is the measure of our character. That is who we are. Out of many, one. Ladies and gentlemen, have faith. Have faith. The state of our union is hopeful, resilient, and enduring. God bless you. God bless your families. And may God bless the United States of America. Thank you.
Third-term Democratic Congressman Joe Kennedy speaking from a vocational training school in Fall River, Massachusetts, in his congressional district, lifting up a Democratic vision of fairness and calling out President Trump and his administration for what he called a zero-sum game approach. Let's go quickly to our Lisa Desjardins at the Capitol. Lisa, how are they reacting to the president's speech and to this?
Speaking to a few members of Congress, who, you were right, Judy, got out of that chamber pretty quickly. Members of both parties used a single word, Judy, and it was interesting. It was subdued. Talking to a Republican, he said that was a good thing. And talking to a Democrat, they said they're not sure what it means. I can tell you it wasn't just the president's speech that was subdued. The atmosphere here in general, Judy, has a much lower energy quality to it than State of the Unions I've seen in the past. I don't know if that has to do with all of the dynamics swirling around the Capitol, but it's something I've certainly noticed tonight.
Well, I know, Lisa, you've been talking to members of Congress, and we're going to be putting that online for our viewers to watch. Just very quickly, Mark Shields, David Brooks, we've got about a minute. Take away from the whole night, Mark.
I'll take 55 seconds. 37 years old, younger than the president's son. That was a generational change. That was the message tonight. The messenger was the message.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I would say Donald Trump uses a lot of us-them distinctions, and Democrats have a tendency to fall into that, a class warfare. Kennedy, because he heralds from his family, did the all of us theme, and it's probably a better theme for Democrats.
Except
Amy?
it felt a lot like the Hillary Clinton 2016 Stronger Together speech, just repackaged in this year, and it was not a particularly successful strategy in 2016 is time different now that Trump is actually president. We'll wait and see.
Matt Schlapp.
I give him credit. I think they set up the speech well. I like the enthusiasm to begin with. I just think it was a little harshly partisan. I don't think that was the right way to go, but give the young man some credit. I think he had an exuberant speech.
Karine Jean-Pierre.
I think he kind of had this Obama-esque quality to that's what I saw. 37 years old, young, really reaching out to the millennials out there. I think the Democrats were doing that, and I think that's important to do.
Well, we want to thank each and every one of you for being here tonight for the President's State of the Union. We're going to continue to cover this online, but for now, that wraps up our special live coverage of President Trump's State of the Union address and the Democrats' response, which you just heard. I want to thank all of our guests again, everyone who joined us. I'm Judy Woodruff. Stay with us as our coverage continues, as we said online. For all of us at the PBS NewsHour, thank you, and we'll see you soon.
This program was made possible by viewers like you. Thank you.
You're watching PBS.